as much as possible, let us see how well we can present the bill to the plenary as practical as possible as it was presented in the last parliament originally. 1. 2. The issue here that we are dealing with,
I think it's clear.
the issue we are dealing with here is just the stigma that biological abnormality, correcting a biological abnormality in reference to intersex brings. That's all. Because you see, when you talk about the surgery, and that's where I vary or differ from my brother and colleague in Team Fojo. When you talk about gender reassignment, it is not a one-off surgery. It's a series of surgeries, similar to what may happen with an intersex person who is carrying out surgeries as well. Because when you have a man who is transitioning from being a man to a woman, and that's a gender reassignment surgery, it is not one surgery. There are a series of surgeries. So, for example, if you had an intersex person whose dominant chromosome and all the tests show is a man, but has developed breast like a woman, and that person is going to do corrective surgery on the breast, that may not be done in one go. It may be a series of surgeries and treatments. But that same process is also going to be legal for a woman who is transitioning to a man and reassigning her gender, who wants to lose her breast and also go through the same treatment. Now, what this provision says is that that practice is illegal except for an intersex person. Because you can still have the same kind of treatments that an intersex person will go through, that someone doing gender reassignment will go through. And so that's why you should not take this out, because then it defeats the intention of criminalizing the procedure, which is what this bill is seeking to do. But we are accepting similar procedure if it is requisite for a person who is intersex. I don't know if you get the distinction.
We are adding them on this, but myself and Honorable Sam George, we are speaking in Honorable we are speaking the same language. But what we are saying here is that, yes, we recognize that there may be the need for medical interventions in correcting certain external features of a male or a female. Here, the primary reference or our definition, sex, when you go to interpretation, says sex, which is a fundamental definition around which every other provision, emanates, says that sex means the binary categories of male and female or chromosomal composition at birth. At birth. And the medical authoritative reference is chromosome. And thankfully, we don't have any other variations of sex chromosomally except XX and XY. So when a person, you appreciate.
This is not dealing with.
No, you appreciate, let me land. So for instance, a female who has been assigned XX at birth, who later, unfortunately, due to, let's say, breast cancer, has to undergo a breast removal surgery, the person is doing so, and the person is not coming under any contravention. Because, yes, it's a medical intervention. It is not reassigning any. But the same way, when an intersex person is born, the medical doctors have a way of medically determining their gender. Although, so the reference, everybody born is born male or female. You may have certain external manifestations which may need intervention, but that intervention is not tampering with the sex assigned at birth. It is only reinforcing. It is only correcting certain features that reinforce the gender.
Okay, so before you even come
just so that we are clear. The provision we are dealing with is not dealing with the determination of chromosomal composition or sex and whether you are male or female. That's what I'm saying, that the honorable intending should read what we are dealing with. We are dealing with 3.1G.
Yes.
It says a person shall, this is under prohibition of LGBTQ plus and related activities. This is not about determining the sex of the person.
Yeah.
That's not what this provision is dealing with. The argument he's making is valid when you are dealing with determining whether the person's sex is male or female. But that's not what this is dealing with. This is dealing with the prohibition of any surgical procedure for reassignment. So at that time, determination has been made already. Yeah. But the question is that when the determination has been made that you are male at birth, then you now want to go and do surgery to become female, to have a vagina and to have fallopian tubes. That's what this is dealing with. This is not dealing with whether you are male or female. That's been determined. If an intersex person is born, the predominant chromosomes are determined. But at a certain age, the person decides to take steps to correct any physical manifestation that is different. That is different from what has been determined as sex. What we are saying is that procedure is being exempt from being criminalized.
Yes.
So we don't need to go into
we are going to go with it. Indeed, when let me come in.
In the case where the doctors, let's also have better mind, in the case where the sex determined at birth is XX, but still intersex, and then so assumed to be female, and then later on, under the guise of intersex, the person is undergoing medical intervention, which will make the person now XY. That is prohibited. No. Present. It is not seeking to target intersex. Yeah. It is not seeking to deny intersex any marital privileges or sexual privileges. Yeah. And that is why we also recognize the special categorization and the interventions that are medically necessary.
The reason we are exempting
married at various stages, the reason we are exempted. So they are exempted. The contention we are giving here is, my argument was to further even enhance the removal of stereotypes, so that people do not see intersex people as attaching stigma. Absolutely, because their sex is determined at birth. And then, as they go on at various stages, certain interventions medically are necessary to reinforce that gender.
Okay, that's fine. Let's move on. What would you define as a non-binary as part of your 3EIX? Yes.
Defined in 18. Non-binary means a sex categorization other than male or female. Because there are people who today in the LGBTQ community hold out not as a he or a she, but as an it or as a they. Some people recognize themselves as objects. They don't want to be categorized. Binary definition of gender is male and female. There are people who say that they are neither male nor female. And so we are holding those people, we are prohibiting such expressions in Ghana. So that's what we mean by non-binary.
V-I-I-I, an ally.
An ally are those who...
An ally. Does that include a health worker?
So
read your definition.
Yes. Yeah. So an ally is defined as a person who produces, procures, markets, broadcasts, disseminates, publishes or distributes a material with intent to promote an act prohibited under this act. B. Evoke the interest of a child in an act prohibited under this act. Or C. Teach a child to explore a gender other than the binary category of male or female. So for example, if you have a health worker who is actively prescribing testosterone to a woman to help her transition, that person is carrying out an act that is promoting an act prohibited under this bill. So a teacher who is teaching children that it is okay for a boy to fall in love with another boy or a girl, that person is considered an ally. Allies are largely heterosexual people who themselves are not engaged in any LGBTQ, but promote the activities for in many instances financial gain. So many of the rights groups in Ghana are led by heterosexuals who are busy pushing that we must recognize homosexual rights, meanwhile they are heterosexual, and claiming that it is human rights. So allies are a category of persons who themselves may not be practitioners of any of the prohibited acts here, but are promoters and encouragers and facilitators of the acts we are prohibiting.
They are abettors. They are more or less abettors. So, and you can abet in so many ways.
We are going to go on a practical demonstration.
Yes.
I have a book in my hand, and Chair, you may even look at it before I put relevant pages in it.
The book reads Physical Education and Health, Minister of Education for Senior High Schools, Teacher Manual.
Please turn to page 3.
Let me help you. No, let me explain.
The guys,
Yes.
are no longer captured under this provision.
So,
The principle in law is to have 99 guilty people go through than have one innocent person criminally. So what Honorable Intim is
an extreme
exception of someone who is criminally minded to try to take advantage of the intersex exception to do gender reassignment. We cannot, out of that fear, create an opportunity or prevent the majority of legally minded people. So I would say that let's err on the side.
okay, so I think we are good to go on that. Initially, when he raised the issue, I had to go back to 1C where we started correcting the intersex. And then that correction was very clear. It says, who provides or participates in the provision of sex or gender reassignment, surgical procedure, or any other. They are not conjunctive, they are all disjunctive. So it can either be this, that. Initially, the reason Chief Whip was saying we should make a separate provision was also the assumption as if they were boxed together. So if you do any of this, then except in the case of intersex. So that we understood it clearly. And that will rhyme to. On that note, medical officer, please provide us, let the medical person provide us with. Yes.
I just don't want to be misconstrued. My contention here is that intersex people are within the binary categories. So they are not outside the binary categories. So that it further removes the stigmatization that intersex people are not, within the binary notion. They are, because their gender is determined at birth. They are.
Okay. Doc, in the light of the discussion that we are having now, just indicate us in just 2 minutes.
Can you give me the microphone?
Please, okay, mic.
So now your microphone is not working. You want to turn it on. Turn it on.
Hello.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Okay, so just to put it in simple terms, so the sex determination, we have the genotypic sex and phenotypic sex. Genotype is where Honorable Ntimfonyo mentions that XX or XY. However, phenotypic sex is what we see on the outside. What we see is either male or female with our eyes. Intersex is a variation of condition, not one condition. So if somebody is born XY, there are some conditions that can make the person appear, the external organs will appear as a female.
Yeah.
So such a person, if he is diagnosed as intersex, those procedures are not sort of gender reassignment, they are for treatment for medical purposes. So such a person is being treated, that's where the exception comes in. However, if the person is XY, everything is male from outside, from inside to outside, and grows up and decides, okay, me, I want to turn into this, that's where the other one comes in. So once you make the exception that intersex is exempted, it means that the person is first of all diagnosed as intersex, and then whatever necessary is done for the person. So that person should be exempted from the others we are talking about.
Exemption is not in doubt. I'm just saying, except when we are saying reassignment, that is where
No, so reassignment, it's a or, it's a disjunctive. It is this or that. So whichever is applicable to the intersex is what we will use. 3.
I need a clarification, just for educative purpose.
Yeah.
You can have a situation where someone is born at birth, but it's not determined, to the extent that they may have to perform some surgical, most often they are females, just to open. It's a biological procedure, all right, just to open some parts in order to let it be defined that it's a female. You get it? When you undergo such a procedure, my worry is taking out undergone surgical procedure is a problem, because when you look at three